"That's a museum piece, lady." Detective Marcus Rivera sneered as he examined the weathered rifle case sitting on the police department's conference table, his voice dripping with condescension as other SWAT team members gathered around to witness what they clearly considered amateur hour. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez stood quietly beside her equipment, her calloused hands resting calmly at her sides as the room filled with barely suppressed laughter and whispered comments about the antique hardware she'd brought to what was supposed to be the most critical hostage situation in Phoenix's recent history. The morning sun streamed through the tactical command center's windows, illuminating dust motes that danced around Elena's decades-old Remington 700, a rifle that had seen action across 3 different continents and carried scars from conflicts most of these younger officers had only read about in training manuals. Rivera opened the case with theatrical flourish, his perfectly manicured fingers tracing the worn wooden stock that had been hand-carved and customized over countless missions, his expression growing more amused as he took in the rifle's obviously dated appearance. "This thing looks like it belongs in my grandfather's hunting cabin," he announced to the assembled team, his voice carrying across the room as phones emerged to capture what would surely become a viral moment among law enforcement circles. Weapon's blued steel showed honest wear patterns, its scope mounted with rings that bore the patina of age and use, while the bolt-action mechanism moved with the smooth precision that only comes from thousands of rounds fired in the most demanding circumstances imaginable. Elena's weathered face remained impassive as she watched the performance, her steel-gray eyes taking in every detail of the room's dynamics while her mind automatically cataloged wind patterns, visible through the windows, and calculated distances to the high-rise apartment building where 47 innocent people were being held by a group of heavily armed extremists who had already demonstrated their willingness to kill anyone who crossed them. The tactical team's own equipment gleamed with modern sophistication, their high-tech rifles sporting the latest in digital optics and computerized range-finding systems that cost more than most people's annual salaries, weapons that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies rather than real-world law enforcement operations. "Ma'am, with all due respect," Captain Sarah Mitchell interjected, her tone suggesting anything but respect as she gestured toward the array of cutting-edge sniper rifles already positioned around the command center. "We've got state-of-the-art precision weapon systems here, thermal imaging scopes, ballistic computers that can calculate everything from wind drift to target movement prediction. I'm not sure why you think we need." She paused, searching for the right words to describe Elena's obviously obsolete equipment without being overtly insulting. Whatever this is supposed to be. The room's atmosphere grew thick with tension as more officers gathered to witness what had become an impromptu exhibition of outdated military hardware, their expressions ranging from amused disbelief to outright skepticism about Elena's qualifications for such a high-stakes operation. Detective Rivera lifted the rifle from its case, his handling betraying his unfamiliarity with the weapon's balance and weight distribution, nearly dropping it as he attempted to shoulder the unfamiliar stock configuration. "Jesus, this thing weighs a ton," he complained loudly, struggling with the rifle's substantial heft while completely missing the significance of its custom modifications and personally fitted ergonomics that had been perfected through years of field use under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Elena's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as she watched her father's rifle being handled with such casual disrespect, her mind flashing to memories of Master Sergeant Thomas Chun, the Marine Corps' legend who had taught her that a weapon was only as good as the warrior who wielded it, and that fancy technology could never replace fundamental marksmanship skills, patience, and the kind of hard-won experience that came from taking impossible shots under impossible circumstances. The rifle had been his before it became hers, passed down along with decades of accumulated wisdom about reading wind, understanding ballistics, and maintaining absolute calm when lives hung in the balance of a single triggered squeeze. "Look, lady," Rivera continued, his voice growing more patronizing as he gained confidence from the crowd's supportive murmurs. "I don't know what backwater department you came from, but this is Phoenix PD, and we don't play games with antique equipment when people's lives are on the line. Why don't you just observe from the command post while the professionals handle this situation?" His words hung in the air like a challenge, his expression making it clear that he considered Elena's presence an unwelcome distraction from serious police work that required modern tools and contemporary training. The hostage situation had been developing for 6 hours already, with negotiators unable to establish meaningful communication with the barricaded suspects who had taken control of an entire apartment complex, systematically moving hostages between floors to prevent any clear shots from conventional positions. Elena had been called in as a last resort, her reputation preceding her through law enforcement circles that understood the difference between standard SWAT capabilities and the kind of precision shooting that required genuine expertise rather than expensive equipment. But clearly that reputation hadn't reached everyone in this particular command center. As Elena stood there absorbing the mockery and dismissal, her weathered hands remained steady despite the obvious disrespect being shown to both her and her equipment, her mind already calculating the unique challenges presented by the apartment building's architecture, the afternoon sun's angle, and the complex wind patterns created by surrounding high-rises. She had faced much worse than professional skepticism during her years overseas, where doubt could kill and results were the only currency that mattered, where her ability to place a single shot with absolute precision had meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure on more occasions than she cared to remember. The morning briefing had revealed the full scope of the crisis. Armed extremists had seized the Sunset Towers apartment complex during what was supposed to be a routine immigration raid, turning a law enforcement operation into a hostage nightmare that now threatened the lives of 47 innocent people, including 12 children whose only crime had been living in the wrong building at the wrong time. Time was running out, conventional tactical approaches had failed, and somewhere in that building, desperate people were counting on professionals to save them from an increasingly volatile situation that could explode into violence at any moment. Elena's expression remained neutral as she absorbed every slight and dismissive comment, but deep in her chest, she felt the familiar stirring of controlled determination that had carried her through some of the most challenging shots in modern military history. They had just underestimated the wrong woman. I wonder where you're watching this story unfold from today, whatever corner of America you're calling home right now. Perhaps you're sitting in a bustling coffee shop in downtown Seattle, or maybe you're taking a break from work in a quiet office building in Charlotte, North Carolina. You might be relaxing on your couch in a suburban neighborhood outside Denver, or catching up on stories during your lunch break in a small town in Ohio that most people have never heard of. Wherever you are in this vast country of ours, I'm willing to bet you've witnessed someone being dismissed because of their age, their gender, or simply because their methods seemed outdated compared to the shiny new alternatives that everyone else was using. You've probably seen it happen in your own workplace, haven't you? The moment when someone's experience gets overshadowed by the latest technology, when wisdom earned through years of hard-won battles gets pushed aside in favor of whatever gadget promises to make everything faster, easier, more efficient. Maybe you've watched a seasoned teacher get criticized for using chalk and the blackboard, while younger colleagues swear by their digital smartboards and interactive displays. Perhaps you've seen a master craftsman's hand tools mocked by apprentices who believe that expensive power equipment automatically makes them better at their trade. There's something uniquely American about our fascination with the newest, the latest, the most advanced version of everything. We live in a culture that constantly tells us that newer is always better, that tradition is just another word for being stuck in the past, that if you're not using the cutting-edge solution, you must be falling behind. Walk into any electronics store, any car dealership, any sporting goods shop, and you'll be bombarded with messages about how this year's model makes last year's version completely obsolete, how the latest upgrade will solve problems you didn't even know you had. But sometimes, just sometimes, there's a moment when all that shiny new technology meets something much older, much more fundamental, much more proven by the kind of testing that can't be replicated in any laboratory or simulated on any computer. It's the moment when experience trumps innovation, when skill overshadows equipment, when the human element proves that it still matters more than any manufacturer's specifications or marketing promises could ever suggest. You felt that tension yourself, I'm sure. Maybe you're someone who still prefers to navigate using paper maps instead of GPS, trusting your own sense of direction over satellite guidance that can disappear the moment you lose signal. Perhaps you're the person who still writes important notes by hand, because you know that the physical act of writing helps you remember better than typing ever could. You might be someone who learned to cook from your grandmother's handwritten recipes, understanding that some knowledge can't be digitized or optimized, only passed down through patient demonstration and careful practice. In our rush toward technological perfection, we sometimes forget that the most reliable solutions are often the ones that have been tested not in controlled environments, but in the chaos of real-world application. We overlook the fact that the person who learned their skills when equipment was simpler and less forgiving might actually understand the fundamentals better than someone who has always relied on computer assistance and automated corrections. We dismiss the possibility that decades of experience might have taught someone how to adapt, improvise, and succeed under conditions that would overwhelm even the most sophisticated modern systems. The story you're about to hear is one of those rare moments when assumptions about old versus new, outdated versus cutting edge, experienced versus contemporary, get turned completely upside down in the most dramatic way possible. It's about what happens when life or death situations strip away all the pretense and posturing, revealing that sometimes the oldest tools in the right hands can accomplish what the newest technology cannot. But this isn't just a story about equipment or tactics or professional competence. It's really a story about respect, about the dangerous arrogance that comes from assuming you understand someone's capabilities based on superficial appearances. It's about the kind of prejudice that exists in every profession, every community, every social circle, where people make judgments about others based on age, gender, or methodology without taking the time to understand what lies beneath the surface. Across America, in police departments and fire stations, in hospitals and schools, in corporate boardrooms and construction sites, there are people carrying knowledge and skills that can't be measured by the equipment they use or the technology they prefer. These are the individuals who learned their trades when margins for error were smaller, when backup systems were simpler, when success depended entirely on personal competence rather than technological assistance. They're the emergency room doctors, who can diagnose conditions by observation and intuition that younger colleagues need expensive tests to identify. They're the mechanics who can hear what's wrong with an engine, while others need computer diagnostics to find the same problem. They're the teachers who can reach struggling students through methods that can't be programmed into any educational software, and the craftspeople who can create beauty and function with tools that their predecessors would recognize. In law enforcement particularly, there's often a tension between veteran officers who learned their skills through years of street experience and newer officers who have been trained on the latest equipment and contemporary techniques. Both approaches have value, both bring important capabilities to the table, but the conflict between them can sometimes blind people to the unique strengths that each perspective offers. What you're about to discover is what happened when that conflict reached its breaking point, when the stakes couldn't have been higher, and when 47 innocent lives hung in the balance of a decision about whether experience or technology would prove more reliable. It's a story that will make you question everything you think you know about the relationship between old and new, between proven methods and innovative solutions, between the wisdom of age and the confidence of youth. The question I want you to keep in mind as this story unfolds is simple but profound. When everything is on the line, when there's no room for error, when lives depend on absolute precision, what matters more, the sophistication of your tools or the depth of your experience? Elena Vasquez lived in a modest duplex on the south side of Phoenix, the kind of neighborhood where working-class families had built quiet lives away from the city's sprawling suburban developments and trendy downtown districts. Her half of the building featured a small front yard with desert landscaping that required minimal maintenance, perfectly suited to her practical nature and the long hours her consulting work often demanded. The interior reflected the same understated functionality, with furniture chosen for comfort and durability rather than style, though careful observers might notice the exceptional quality of seemingly simple items, like the handcrafted wooden coffee table or the precisely organized bookshelf, filled with technical manuals and military histories. At 43, Elena carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from facing genuine challenges and emerging stronger, though nothing about her appearance suggested the extraordinary skills that had once made her one of the most respected precision shooters in the United States Marine Corps. Her graying brown hair was usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her preference for simple jeans and button-down shirts made her virtually invisible in most social settings. She drove a 15-year-old Toyota pickup truck that started reliably every morning and required only basic maintenance, exactly the kind of dependable transportation that matched her personality perfectly. Most of her neighbors knew Elena as the quiet woman who worked irregular hours and sometimes disappeared for days at a time on consulting assignments, though few understood the specialized nature of her expertise or the elite military background that qualified her for the kind of work that brought law enforcement agencies calling when their own capabilities weren't sufficient. She maintained friendly but distant relationships with the people around her, the kind of cordial interactions that involved waving across driveways and helping retrieve garbage cans after windy days, but rarely extended to deeper conversations about personal histories or professional experiences. Her daily routine centered around the physical fitness regimen that had become second nature during 20 years of military service, beginning each morning with a 5-mile run through the desert trails that crisscrossed the mountains surrounding Phoenix. The pre-dawn darkness provided solitude and cool temperatures that made the exercise both peaceful and practical, allowing her to maintain the cardiovascular conditioning that remained essential to her work despite no longer serving in active combat roles. She followed the run with a series of strength exercises in the converted garage that served as her home gym, using basic equipment that emphasized functional movement over impressive weights or sophisticated machinery. Elena's professional life as an independent tactical consultant kept her occupied with training programs for law enforcement agencies across the southwestern United States, teaching specialized courses in precision shooting, stress management, and tactical decision-making to officers who needed skills beyond standard police academy preparation. Her reputation in these circles was built on results rather than marketing, with departments calling her based on recommendations from colleagues who had witnessed her ability to improve performance in ways that couldn't be achieved through conventional training methods. She specialized in working with SWAT teams and specialty units that faced high-stakes situations where standard procedures weren't sufficient. The work provided adequate income without the pressure and politics that had eventually made military life untenable, allowing her to apply her expertise in contexts where she could make a difference without navigating the complex bureaucracy that had frustrated her during the final years of her service. Most assignments involved teaching rather than operational work, though she occasionally accepted consulting roles that required her to participate directly in tactical planning or provide specialized capabilities that client agencies lacked internally. Elena's personal life was deliberately simple. structured around the few relationships that had survived her transition from military to civilian life and the new connections she had built slowly and carefully over the past 5 years since leaving active duty. She maintained regular contact with 3 former Marine colleagues who had also transitioned to civilian careers, meeting monthly for dinner at a small Mexican restaurant where they could talk freely about shared experiences that few civilians would understand. These conversations provided an outlet for processing the ongoing adjustment to life outside the military structure that had defined their adult years. Her apartment walls displayed only a few carefully chosen items that reflected her background. A framed photograph of her graduation from Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, a shadow box containing her service ribbons and commendations, and a single piece of original artwork created by a fellow veteran who had channeled his post-service struggles into sculpture. The most prominent feature of the living room was her father's rifle case, positioned on a custom-built stand that honored both the weapon's significance and its continued readiness for use when circumstances demanded. The rifle itself represented Elena's most tangible connection to Master Sergeant Thomas Chun, who had died in a training accident when she was 26 and still developing the skills that would eventually make her exceptional. He had modified the weapon extensively during his own 28-year career, creating a precision instrument that reflected decades of accumulated knowledge about ballistics, ergonomics, and the subtle factors that separated good shooting from extraordinary marksmanship. Elena had continued those modifications, adding her own refinements based on lessons learned in Afghanistan and Iraq, where she had taken shots that saved American lives under conditions that tested every aspect of her training. Her daily interaction with neighbors and colleagues revealed nothing about the classified missions, the confirmed kills at distances that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible, or the commendations that recognized her contributions to operations that would never be publicly acknowledged. To the outside world, Elena Vasquez was simply a quiet professional who worked in law enforcement consulting, lived modestly, and kept to herself in ways that suggested competence without arrogance, experience without bragging, and capabilities that she saw no need to advertise. The consulting work fulfilled her need to remain connected to meaningful, professional challenges, while providing the independence and flexibility that she had craved during the final years of military service. When bureaucracy and politics had increasingly interfered with the mission-focused environment that had originally drawn her to specialized operations, Elena's journey to becoming one of the Marine Corps' most lethal precision shooters began in the mountains of rural Colorado, where her father had taught her to hunt with the same methodical patience he brought to his work as a master gunsmith. Thomas Chun had emigrated from Taiwan as a young man, carrying with him an almost reverent respect for craftsmanship and precision that he channeled into both his profession and his approach to raising his only daughter. Their weekend hunting trips weren't casual recreational outings but intensive education sessions where Elena learned to read wind patterns, calculate distances without technological assistance, and understand that every shot represented a commitment that couldn't be undone. By the time Elena was 16, she could consistently hit targets at ranges that impressed seasoned hunters twice her age, using iron sights and hand-loaded ammunition that her father had crafted specifically for their shared rifle. Thomas had served briefly in the Army during the Vietnam era, though he rarely spoke about his military experience, except to emphasize that shooting was a responsibility that required absolute respect for the weapon, the target, and the consequences of every trigger pull. His workshop became Elena's second classroom, where she learned to maintain equipment with obsessive attention to detail and understand that reliability under stress was more important than any performance specification or marketing claim. Elena's decision to join the Marines immediately after high school surprised everyone except her father, who recognized that his daughter possessed the kind of discipline, intelligence, and steady temperament that elite military units desperately needed. Her initial training at Paris Island revealed an unusual combination of physical resilience, mental toughness, and natural marksmanship ability that caught the attention of instructors who had seen thousands of recruits pass through their programs. Unlike many of her peers who struggled with the stress and intensity of military training, Elena found herself energized by challenges that demanded everything she had learned about precision, patience, and performance under pressure. The selection process for Scout Sniper School represented one of the most demanding qualification programs in the American military, with failure rates approaching 80% among candidates who had already proven themselves exceptional Marines. Elena's acceptance into the program made her one of only 3 women attempting qualification that year, a statistic that brought unwanted attention and additional scrutiny from both instructors and fellow candidates, who questioned whether female Marines could handle the physical and psychological demands of precision shooting in combat environments. Her performance during the grueling months of advanced training silenced most skeptics while establishing relationships with instructors who recognized her potential for operational assignments that required capabilities beyond standard military training. Elena mastered not only the technical aspects of long-range shooting, but also the fieldcraft skills that separated scout snipers from conventional marksmen, camouflage and concealment techniques that could keep her invisible for days, navigation methods that worked when technology failed, and the psychological resilience necessary to take human lives at distances where targets remained anonymous but objectives stayed crystal clear. Elena's first deployment to Afghanistan placed her with a Marine expeditionary unit conducting operations in the mountainous regions where Taliban forces moved freely between Pakistan and Afghanistan, using terrain and local knowledge to avoid conventional military forces. Her role involved providing overwatch for infantry patrols, eliminating high-value targets, and gathering intelligence from positions that offered commanding views of strategic valleys and mountain passes. The environment demanded everything she had learned about shooting in challenging conditions, with altitude, temperature variations, and unpredictable wind patterns that could turn routine shots into complex mathematical problems requiring split-second solutions. Over 3 deployments spanning 7 years, Elena compiled a record of confirmed kills that earned respect from special operations units, who competed for her support during critical missions. Her longest confirmed shot, taken during a night operation to extract a captured intelligence officer, covered nearly 1,400 meters through swirling mountain winds that required her to compensate for conditions that changed between the time she fired and when the bullet reached its target. The successful elimination of 2 enemy fighters positioned to ambush the rescue team earned her a Bronze Star and recognition as one of the most capable precision shooters in theater. Elena's expertise extended beyond individual marksmanship to include training roles where she developed curricula for teaching advanced shooting techniques to special operations personnel who needed capabilities that exceeded standard military training. Her methods emphasized fundamentals over technology, stress inoculation over perfect conditions, and the kind of adaptability that allowed skilled shooters to achieve success with whatever equipment was available rather than depending on optimal gear configurations. The transition from active combat operations to training assignments reflected Elena's growing expertise in developing human capabilities rather than simply demonstrating her own skills. Though her reputation among elite units continued to generate requests for operational support during particularly challenging missions, her final active deployment involved working with Army Special Forces units conducting counter-terrorism operations in Iraq, where urban environments demanded precision shooting techniques that differed significantly from the mountain warfare that had characterized her Afghanistan experience. Elena's decision to leave active duty after 20 years reflected her growing frustration with military bureaucracy that increasingly interfered with mission effectiveness, along with her desire to find ways of applying her expertise without the personal costs that came with repeated combat deployments. Her father's death from cancer during her final year of service provided additional motivation to transition to civilian life, where she could honor his memory by continuing to perfect the marksmanship skills he had first taught her while building a life that offered more stability and personal autonomy than military service allowed. The consulting work that became Elena's civilian career allowed her to remain connected to the law enforcement and military communities that valued her expertise, while providing the independence and flexibility that she had learned to prize during years of following orders and adapting to institutional priorities that didn't always align with operational effectiveness. Detective Marcus Rivera had built his reputation at Phoenix PD through a combination of aggressive tactics, political savvy, and an uncanny ability to position himself at the center of high-profile cases that generated media attention and departmental recognition. At 34, he possessed the kind of confident swagger that came from 6 years of steady promotions and a string of successful operations that had earned him leadership of the department's elite tactical response unit. His perfectly maintained appearance, from his precisely trimmed beard to his custom-fitted tactical gear, projected an image of professional competence that played well with supervisors, reporters, and the kind of civic leaders who influenced departmental budgets and career advancement opportunities. Rivera's approach to law enforcement emphasized modern methodology and cutting-edge equipment, philosophy he had developed during his military service with an Army unit that specialized in urban operations in Iraq. His experience there had convinced him that technological superiority was the key to tactical success, a belief reinforced by his subsequent training with federal agencies that provided access to the most advanced weapons systems and surveillance equipment available to civilian law enforcement. He had personally overseen the acquisition of Phoenix PD's current sniper rifles, digital scope systems, and ballistic computer networks that represented nearly $500,000 in specialized equipment. The detective's rise within the department had been accelerated by his ability to deliver results in situations where conventional policing had proven inadequate, particularly hostage scenarios and barricaded suspect incidents that required tactical responses beyond standard patrol capabilities. His team's success rate earned him speaking engagements at law enforcement conferences across the Southwest, where he advocated for increased investment in military-grade equipment and training programs that emphasize technological solutions to complex operational challenges. Rivera's leadership style reflected his belief that respect had to be earned through demonstrated competence rather than deference to seniority or traditional authority structures that he viewed as obstacles to effective law enforcement. This perspective had created tension with veteran officers who favored experience-based approaches, but it had also generated loyalty among younger personnel who appreciated his willingness to challenge established practices and advocate for resources that enhanced their operational capabilities. The tactical unit under Rivera's command represented the department's most visible symbol of modern policing, with officers trained on equipment that rivaled what was available to federal agencies and military special operations units. Their high-tech arsenal included thermal imaging systems, drone surveillance platforms, and precision rifles equipped with computer-assisted targeting systems that could calculate range, wind compensation, and trajectory corrections automatically. Rivera took personal pride in ensuring that his team had access to whatever technological advantages were available, arguing that officer safety and mission success depended on maintaining superiority over criminals who were increasingly well-armed and tactically sophisticated. Rivera's confidence in technological solutions had been validated through numerous successful operations where superior equipment had provided decisive advantages over suspects who relied on conventional weapons and basic tactics. His team's ability to resolve dangerous situations with minimal casualties had earned recognition from city leadership and generated the kind of positive media coverage that enhanced both personal and departmental reputations within Phoenix's competitive law enforcement environment. The detective's skepticism toward outside consultants and unconventional approaches reflected his belief that effective tactical operations required coordinated teamwork using standardized equipment and established procedures rather than relying on individual expertise or non-standard methodologies. His experience had taught him that success in high-stakes situations depended on predictable performance from known variables, rather than introducing unknown factors that could compromise carefully planned operations. Rivera's personal investment in the department's technological capabilities extended beyond professional considerations to include genuine pride in the sophisticated systems that distinguished Phoenix PD from smaller agencies that lacked similar resources. He viewed the advanced equipment as symbols of professional competence and institutional commitment to officer safety, values that he believed were threatened by suggestions that older methods or simpler tools might be equally effective under certain circumstances. The hostage situation at Sunset Towers represented exactly the kind of challenge that Rivera's unit had been designed to handle, with multiple suspects, complex architectural considerations, and time pressure that demanded rapid deployment of specialized capabilities. His tactical assessment had identified several potential shooting positions that would allow his snipers to engage targets using their computer-assisted systems, plans that relied on the technological advantages that had proven effective in previous operations. Rivera's dismissal of Elena's equipment reflected not only his confidence in modern technology but also his belief that allowing unproven methods to influence critical operations represented an unacceptable risk to both hostage safety and his team's reputation. His responsibility for the operation's success made him reluctant to deviate from established procedures that had generated consistent results, particularly when deviation involved trusting someone whose capabilities he couldn't verify through direct experience or institutional endorsement. The detective's antagonistic response to Elena's presence also reflected deeper tensions within law enforcement between different generations of officers who had learned their skills in different contexts and under different technological constraints. Rivera's military experience in Iraq had convinced him that modern warfare demanded modern solutions, while Elena's background suggested an approach that he associated with outdated thinking that failed to take advantage of available technological superiority. Rivera's confidence in his team's capabilities was reinforced by their track record of successful operations and their mastery of equipment that represented the current state of the art in precision shooting technology. Their thermal scopes could identify targets in conditions where conventional optics would be useless, while their ballistic computers could compensate for environmental factors that would challenge even experienced shooters using traditional methods. The detective's resistance to Elena's involvement extended beyond professional skepticism to include personal concerns about maintaining the team cohesion and operational confidence that he had built through years of training and successful missions together. The systematic campaign to undermine Elena's credibility began within hours of her arrival at the Phoenix PD Command Center, as Rivera's influence spread through the department's informal networks and established hierarchies that determined whose opinions carried weight during critical operations. Word quickly circulated among tactical team members that the outside consultant had brought outdated equipment to what was being called the most important hostage situation in recent departmental history, with each retelling adding additional details about the obsolete rifle and questioning the wisdom of allowing unproven methods to compromise a carefully planned operation. Captain Sarah Mitchell's initial skepticism evolved into active resistance as she consulted with other supervisors who shared her concerns about liability and operational control when outside personnel were involved in high-stakes situations. During a closed-door meeting with Rivera and the tactical team leaders, Mitchell expressed her view that Elena's presence represented an unnecessary complication that could interfere with established command structures and proven methodologies that had generated successful outcomes in previous operations. Her influence with upper-level administrators provided Rivera with institutional support for limiting Elena's role to observation rather than active participation. The equipment mockery became a central theme in conversations throughout the command center, with officers taking turns examining Elena's rifle case and commenting on the obvious age and wear patterns that they interpreted as evidence of obsolescence rather than proven effectiveness. Detective James Morrison, Rivera's closest ally within the tactical unit, made a point of photographing the antique weapon system and sharing the images with contacts at other agencies, generating a steady stream of messages and comments that reinforced the narrative that Phoenix PD was being forced to accommodate amateur hour participation in professional operations. Elena's attempts to contribute to tactical planning sessions were consistently dismissed or redirected toward less critical aspects of the operation, with meeting leaders acknowledging her input with polite nods before returning attention to discussions that centered around the high-tech solutions that Rivera's team preferred. When she identified potential shooting positions that offered superior angles but required different equipment considerations, her suggestions were noted but not incorporated into the operational plan that emphasized technology-dependent approaches over what was characterized as old-fashioned FIELDCR, AFD. The administrative obstacles multiplied as support personnel throughout the department received informal guidance about limiting Elena's access to sensitive information and operational resources that might complicate accountability if the situation escalated into litigation or departmental review. Her security clearance credentials were subjected to additional verification procedures that delayed her access to building plans, suspect intelligence, and communication systems that external consultants would normally receive immediately upon arrival at major incident command centers. Rivera's inner circle expanded their campaign beyond professional dismissal to include personal commentary about Elena's appearance, demeanor, and apparent lack of confidence in modern law enforcement capabilities that they viewed as evidence of someone who had failed to adapt to contemporary operational requirements. Their conversations, conducted with deliberate volume in spaces where Elena could overhear, included speculation about her military record and questions about whether her consulting credentials reflected genuine expertise or simply nostalgia for outdated approaches that had been superseded by superior methodology. The media attention surrounding the hostage situation provided additional opportunities for undermining Elena's credibility, as Rivera positioned himself as the primary spokesperson for tactical operations while ensuring that external consultants remained invisible to reporters who were eager for expert commentary about the department's response to the crisis. His carefully crafted statements emphasized the sophistication of Phoenix PD's equipment and training while subtly suggesting that outside assistance was unnecessary given the department's internal capabilities and resources. Elena's isolation within the command center was reinforced by the seating arrangements, communication protocols, and informal social dynamics that relegated her to peripheral status, despite her official consulting role and specialized expertise that had originally justified her involvement in the operation. Officers who might have been curious about her background or interested in learning from her experience received clear signals that association with the outside consultant could damage their standing within Rivera's expanding sphere of influence. The harassment extended to deliberate interference with Elena's ability to maintain her equipment and prepare for potential deployment, as storage space for her rifle case was located in areas that required multiple security clearances to access, while her requests for basic supplies like cleaning materials and ballistic data were processed through bureaucratic channels that introduced unnecessary delays. These obstacles presented as standard security procedures, effectively prevented her from conducting the preparation routines that were essential for precision shooting under operational conditions. Rivera's campaign gained momentum as the hours passed without resolution, with each failed negotiation attempt and escalating threat from the barricaded suspects used as evidence that the situation required proven methods rather than experimental approaches that could compromise hostage safety. His arguments carried particular weight with supervisors who were facing intense pressure from city leadership and media scrutiny that demanded successful outcomes, rather than innovative problem-solving that might generate criticism if it failed to produce results. The tactical team's solidarity in excluding Elena from meaningful participation reflected not only their loyalty to Rivera but also their genuine belief that operational security and team cohesion required avoiding unproven variables during critical missions, where lives depended on predictable performance from known systems and established procedures. Their resistance to her involvement was presented as professional judgment rather than personal bias, though the intensity of their opposition suggested deeper concerns about challenges to their authority and expertise. Elena's responses to the systematic undermining remained professionally composed, though careful observers might have noticed the slight tightening around her eyes and the increasingly deliberate quality of her movements as she absorbed each slight and dismissal, while maintaining focus on the operational challenges that were developing inside the apartment building where 47 innocent people were running out of time. The crisis reached its breaking point when negotiations collapsed completely after the lead hostage-taker, identified through intelligence sources as Marcus Delgado, a former military contractor with specialized explosives training, issued an ultimatum that sent shockwaves through the command center and triggered immediate escalation protocols that had been designed for exactly this type of worst-case scenario. Delgado's voice, transmitted through a hijacked building intercom system, carried the cold professionalism of someone who understood tactical operations and had calculated his advantages with the same methodical precision that Rivera's team brought to their own planning processes. You have exactly 30 minutes to clear all law enforcement personnel from a 6-block radius around this building, Delgado announced, his words reaching every floor of the apartment complex and broadcasting simultaneously to the police command center through communication channels that he had somehow compromised. Any attempt to maintain surveillance positions, deploy additional personnel, or interfere with our exit strategy will result in the immediate execution of all hostages, beginning with the children on the 3rd floor. The transmission included video footage that confirmed his access to multiple apartment units and his ability to move freely throughout the building while remaining invisible to the thermal imaging systems that Rivera's snipers had been relying on for target identification. The intelligence briefing that followed revealed the full scope of the tactical nightmare that was unfolding inside Sunset Towers, as analysts confirmed that Delgado and his 3 associates had spent weeks preparing the building for exactly this type of siege scenario. They had systematically disabled security cameras, blocked stairwells with improvised barriers that channeled movement through predetermined corridors, and installed what appeared to be a sophisticated network of explosive devices that could be triggered remotely if law enforcement attempted any type of forced entry or assault operation. Captain Mitchell's emergency conference call with federal authorities confirmed that no specialized units could reach Phoenix in time to influence the outcome of a situation that was deteriorating rapidly as the 30-minute deadline approached with relentless precision. The FBI's hostage rescue team was committed to an operation in Los Angeles, while military special operations units required authorization and deployment procedures that would take hours to complete even under emergency protocols that were designed to expedite federal assistance for exactly these types of local law enforcement crises. Rivera's tactical options evaporated systematically as each potential solution encountered obstacles that Delgado had anticipated and prepared countermeasures to defeat, demonstrating a level of professional competence that matched or exceeded what Rivera's own team brought to the situation. The building's architecture prevented direct assault approaches, while the hostage locations made explosive breaching operations impossible without accepting casualties that no law enforcement agency could justify under any operational doctrine or legal framework that governed the use of force in civilian environments. Breakthrough came when building maintenance personnel provided detailed architectural plans that revealed a previously unknown structural feature dating to the building's original construction in the 1970s, when earthquake safety requirements had mandated a specialized foundation system that created a narrow access corridor running beneath the main structure. This corridor, originally designed for seismic monitoring equipment and emergency utilities, offered a potential infiltration route that Delgado's extensive reconnaissance had apparently missed during his preparation for the siege scenario. Elena's examination of the building plans immediately identified what Rivera's team had overlooked during their conventional tactical assessment, as her experience with unconventional warfare in Afghanistan and Iraq had taught her to recognize opportunities that existed outside standard operational frameworks. The underground corridor terminated in a utility room that connected directly to the building's main elevator shaft, providing access to a maintenance ladder that climbed through the center of the structure and emerged onto the roof through a service hatch that building records indicated was still functional. The elevator shaft presented a shooting position that offered direct lines of sight into the fourth-floor apartment, where intelligence indicated Delgado had established his command center, along with clear fields of fire that could cover the third-floor locations, where the hostages were being held in two separate units connected by an internal corridor that the suspects had modified to allow rapid movement between positions. More importantly, the shaft provided a shooting platform that would be completely invisible to the thermal detection equipment that Delgado was using to monitor law enforcement positions around the building's perimeter. Rivera's immediate response to Elena's tactical assessment reflected his growing desperation as conventional solutions failed to address the unique challenges presented by suspects who clearly understood police methodology and had planned countermeasures that neutralized standard SWAT capabilities. His high-tech equipment advantage had been systematically neutralized by adversaries who possessed comparable training and superior preparation, leaving him with no viable options that could guarantee hostage safety while maintaining the operational control that his reputation and career advancement required. The shooting position that Elena had identified required capabilities that exceeded what Rivera's computer-assisted systems could provide, as the angles involved demanded compensation from multiple variables that automated targeting systems weren't designed to calculate under these specific architectural constraints. The shots would have to account for elevation changes, structural deflection possibilities, and wind patterns that were influenced by the building's position among surrounding high-rises in ways that required intuitive understanding rather than technological calculation. Elena's quiet confidence as she explained the tactical possibilities contrasted sharply with the growing tension and uncertainty that pervaded the command center as the deadline approached and traditional solutions proved inadequate to address a crisis that demanded capabilities beyond standard law enforcement training and equipment specifications. Elena moved through the underground access corridor with the fluid efficiency of someone who had navigated countless confined spaces during combat operations, her weathered hands guiding her father's rifle case through the narrow passage wall. Her mind automatically cataloged the structural details that would influence the shots she was about to attempt. The maintenance tunnel's concrete walls showed decades of water damage and settling cracks that spoke to the building's age, but the foundation remained solid beneath her feet as she approached the utility room that would provide access to the elevator shaft and the shooting position that conventional tactical thinking had completely missed. The climb up the maintenance ladder required careful coordination between her equipment and the building's internal structure, as the rifle case's dimensions barely fit through the shaft's access points while her tactical gear caught repeatedly on cable runs and ventilation ducts that had been installed during various renovation projects over the building's 40-year history. Elena's breathing remained controlled and steady despite the physical demands of the ascent. Her muscle memory from similar infiltrations in Afghanistan, automatically managing the stress and exertion that would have overwhelmed someone without her specific training and experience. At the roof level, Elena emerged into afternoon sunlight that revealed the full complexity of the tactical environment she was about to engage, with Phoenix's downtown skyline creating wind patterns that shifted unpredictably between the surrounding buildings while the sun's angle cast shadows that would influence visibility and target identification in ways that required constant adjustment throughout the operation. Her initial assessment confirmed that the shooting position offered the angle she had identified during her planning review, but also revealed additional challenges that hadn't been apparent from the architectural drawings. Elena's equipment setup proceeded with the methodical precision that had kept her alive during operations where a single mistake could compromise entire missions and endanger American lives, as she assembled her father's rifle with modifications that reflected decades of accumulated knowledge about ballistics, ergonomics, and the subtle factors that separated adequate marksmanship from the kind of precision that could save innocent lives under impossible conditions. The weapon's familiar weight and balance provided reassurance that transcended any technological advantages that Rivera's team might possess through their computer-assisted systems. The scope adjustment process revealed the full extent of the challenges she was facing, as the distances involved pushed even her exceptional capabilities to their absolute limits, while environmental factors created variables that would require split-second compensation based on experience rather than calculated solutions. Elena's breathing exercises, learned during her earliest training with her father and refined through years of combat operations, helped center her mind while her body automatically assumed the shooting positions that had become second nature. Through countless hours of practice under every conceivable condition, Elena's communication with the command center established the coordination protocols that would be essential for timing the shots with hostage rescue operations, though she could hear the skepticism in Rivera's voice as he acknowledged her reports about target identification and engagement, parameters that exceeded what his team's equipment could provide under these specific circumstances. The radio conversations revealed the mounting pressure that everyone involved was experiencing as the deadline approached and the stakes continued to escalate with each passing minute. The first target acquisition came as Elena identified Delgado's position in the fourth-floor command center, where thermal signatures and movement patterns indicated that he was monitoring law enforcement positions while maintaining control over the explosive devices that could kill all 47 hostages instantly if he detected any unauthorized activity around the building's perimeter. Elena's crosshairs settled on the narrow window opening that provided her only angle of engagement, a shot that would require compensating for glass deflection, structural interference, and wind patterns that were constantly shifting between the surrounding buildings. Elena's tactical assessment identified the sequence of shots that would be necessary to neutralize all 4 suspects before any of them could trigger the explosive devices or harm the hostages who were being held in separate locations throughout the building. The complexity of the engagement required her to transition between multiple targets at different ranges and elevations, while accounting for the building's structural movement and the psychological factors that would influence suspect behavior once the shooting began. The moment of truth arrived as Elena's scope settled on Delgado's silhouette, her finger finding the familiar trigger that had delivered justice across 3 continents and saved American lives in situations where failure wasn't an option. Her breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm that preceded every critical shot, while her mind calculated the final variables that would determine whether 47 innocent people lived or died based on her ability to place 4 bullets with absolute precision under conditions that would challenge even the most sophisticated technological systems. Elena's first shot shattered the 4th-floor window and found its target with the kind of precision that can't be programmed into any computer system, as Delgado's body crumpled instantly, while his finger fell away from the detonation device that would have killed everyone in the building. The sound of breaking glass and the impact of the bullet seemed to echo across the entire complex as Elena's rifle cycled smoothly, and her scope tracked to the second target position where another suspect was beginning to react to the sudden loss of their leader. The second shot followed within heartbeats of the first, covering a different range and angle while compensating for the suspect's instinctive movement toward cover that Elena had anticipated based on her understanding of how trained personnel respond to sniper attacks. Her bullet found its mark before the target could reach the explosive trigger that would have completed Delgado's plan, ensuring that the hostages remained safe while Elena transitioned to the third engagement that would require the most difficult shot of the sequence. Elena's third and fourth shots demonstrated the full extent of capabilities that 20 years of elite military training had developed, as she engaged targets who were now aware of the threat and attempting to reach positions where they could either harm hostages or trigger explosive devices that would accomplish their mission even in death. The immediate aftermath of Elena's precision shooting created a moment of absolute silence that seemed to stretch across the entire tactical operation, as radio communication stopped mid-sentence and the constant background chatter of the command center fell away while everyone processed what had just occurred in the space of less than 30 seconds. The silence was broken by Elena's calm voice over the radio, reporting 4 targets neutralized, all hostages appear secure, requesting immediate entry teams for building clearance and medical assistance, her tone carrying the same professional composure that had characterized every aspect of her performance since arriving at what everyone had assumed would be Rivera's operation. Captain Mitchell's stunned expression reflected the broader shock that rippled through the command center as officers, who had spent hours dismissing Elena's capabilities, suddenly confronted the reality that she had accomplished in moments what their sophisticated equipment and extensive planning had failed to achieve over an entire day of tactical preparation. The thermal imaging displays that Rivera's team had been monitoring showed the unmistakable heat signatures of 4 motionless figures, while building sensors confirmed that none of the explosive devices had been triggered, indicating that Elena's shots had achieved the kind of precise timing and placement that prevented any retaliatory actions by the suspects. Rivera's reaction progressed through several distinct phases as he absorbed the implications of Elena's success, beginning with disbelief that gave way to professional recognition of an extraordinary tactical achievement that had saved 47 lives while validating approaches that his technological philosophy had systematically dismissed as obsolete. His immediate radio transmission to Elena carried a tone of grudging respect that marked the first time since her arrival that he had addressed her with the kind of professional courtesy that acknowledged her expertise rather than dismissing her contributions as amateur interference. The entry teams that rushed into Sunset Towers discovered a scene that confirmed Elena's tactical assessment and demonstrated the precision of her shooting in ways that would become legendary within law enforcement circles throughout the southwestern United States. Each suspect had been eliminated with single shots that showed the kind of accuracy that couldn't be achieved through luck or standard marksmanship training, while the explosive devices remained exactly as intelligence had indicated, untriggered, and positioned to maximize casualties if any suspect had survived long enough to activate them. Elena's descent from the shooting position proceeded with the same methodical care that had characterized her infiltration, though now her movements carried the additional weight of an extraordinary tactical achievement that had transformed her. Status within the department, from dismissed outsider to proven professional, whose capabilities exceeded anything that conventional law enforcement training could provide. Her rifle case, which had been the object of so much mockery earlier in the day, now represented a precision instrument that had accomplished what $500,000 worth of high-tech equipment couldn't achieve under operational conditions. The hostage interviews that followed revealed the full scope of what Elena's intervention had prevented, as survivors described the systematic terror campaign that Delgado and his associates had implemented throughout their captivity, along with specific threats about explosive devices that would have killed everyone in the building if law enforcement had attempted conventional assault tactics. The children who had been held on the third floor showed signs of severe psychological trauma that would require extensive counseling, but their physical condition confirmed that Elena's shots had occurred before any executions could be carried out. Rivera's debriefing with his tactical team reflected a fundamental reassessment of assumptions about equipment, training, and operational effectiveness that had guided his approach to law enforcement throughout his career. The sophisticated targeting systems and ballistic computers that had formed the foundation of his tactical philosophy had proven inadequate for addressing challenges that required the kind of adaptability and intuitive understanding that Elena had developed through decades of experience in environments where technology was secondary to fundamental marksmanship skills. Elena's interaction with the media representatives who descended on the scene demonstrated her continued preference for deflecting attention rather than capitalizing on what was clearly an extraordinary professional achievement that would generate significant publicity and career opportunities within law enforcement consulting circles. Her brief statements emphasized team coordination and departmental resources rather than individual performance, though reporters quickly identified her military background and began investigating the specialized training that had enabled such precise shooting under operational conditions. The formal recognition that followed Elena's performance included commendations from Phoenix PD leadership, federal agencies that had been monitoring the situation, and veteran organizations that understood the significance of her tactical achievement. Within the broader context of precision shooting capabilities developed through elite military training, Captain Mitchell's public statements praised Elena's professionalism and expertise while acknowledging that the department's initial resistance to outside consultation had nearly prevented the successful resolution that saved 47 innocent lives. Rivera's personal conversation with Elena later that evening revealed the beginning of a professional relationship that transcended their earlier conflict, as he expressed genuine interest in understanding the training methodologies and equipment considerations that had enabled her extraordinary performance. His questions about fundamental marksmanship techniques, stress management, and equipment reliability reflected a growing appreciation for approaches that emphasized human capability development rather than technological solutions to tactical challenges. The broader impact of Elena's success extended throughout Phoenix PD and neighboring agencies that recognized the implications of her achievement for their own tactical capabilities and training programs. Her demonstration that individual expertise and proven equipment could exceed the performance of sophisticated technological systems sparked discussions about resource allocation, training priorities, and the balance between human development and equipment acquisition that would influence law enforcement philosophy throughout the region. Elena's quiet satisfaction as she cleaned and stored her father's rifle that evening reflected not triumph over professional rivals, but fulfillment of the responsibilities that came with exceptional capabilities and the opportunity to honor both her military training and her father's legacy through service that saved innocent lives. The transformation within Phoenix PD began almost immediately, as word of Elena's extraordinary performance spread through law enforcement networks that connected departments across Arizona and the broader southwestern United States, generating requests for training consultations and tactical advice that reflected a fundamental shift in how professional shooters viewed the relationship between equipment sophistication and operational effectiveness. Elena found herself fielding calls from SWAT commanders, federal agencies, and military training facilities that wanted to understand how traditional marksmanship principles could achieve results that exceeded what computer-assisted systems provided. Under real-world conditions where variables couldn't be calculated in advance. Captain Mitchell's formal recommendation led to Elena's appointment as the department's senior tactical consultant, a newly created position that recognized her unique capabilities while providing institutional support for developing training programs that emphasized fundamental skills alongside technological resources. The role allowed Elena to maintain her independence as a civilian contractor while contributing to operational planning and personnel development in ways that honored both her expertise and the department's need for proven capabilities that could address situations beyond standard tactical responses. Rivera's evolution from antagonist to advocate became one of the most remarkable aspects of the aftermath, as he systematically redesigned his team's training protocols to incorporate the precision shooting fundamentals that Elena had demonstrated during the hostage crisis. His willingness to acknowledge the limitations of technology-dependent approaches and embrace methods that emphasized human development over equipment acquisition earned him respect from veteran officers who had questioned his earlier philosophy, while maintaining his influence with younger personnel who appreciated his adaptability and commitment to operational excellence. The department's equipment procurement policies underwent comprehensive review as administrators recognized that Elena's success with decades-old hardware raised important questions about resource allocation and the assumptions that had driven their investment in sophisticated systems that hadn't performed as expected under operational conditions. While maintaining their commitment to providing officers with effective tools, department leadership began emphasizing training programs that developed capabilities independent of specific equipment configurations, ensuring that personnel could adapt to whatever circumstances they encountered in the field. Elena's training programs attracted participants from agencies throughout the region, as her reputation for developing exceptional marksmanship skills through proven methodologies generated demand that exceeded her ability to accommodate while maintaining her consulting work with individual departments. Her courses emphasized stress inoculation, fundamental techniques, and equipment reliability rather than technological solutions, creating a new generation of precision shooters who understood that human capabilities remained the determining factor in successful tactical operations, regardless of available resources. The media attention surrounding Elena's achievement evolved from initial sensationalism about the dramatic rescue to deeper examination of law enforcement training philosophies and the factors that contributed to exceptional performance under pressure. Documentary filmmakers, military historians, and tactical training experts sought interviews that explored the broader implications of her success for understanding how elite capabilities developed through military service could enhance civilian law enforcement effectiveness while maintaining appropriate boundaries between military and police operations. Elena's relationship with the veteran community deepened as her story became a powerful example of how military training translated into civilian service that honored the values and sacrifices that had shaped her development as both a warrior and a protector of innocent lives. Speaking engagements at veteran organizations provided opportunities to discuss transition challenges while demonstrating that military expertise could find meaningful application in contexts that served broader community needs without requiring return to active duty or combat operations. The Sunset Towers incident became a case study in tactical training programs throughout the United States, as law enforcement academies incorporated Elena's approach into curricula that emphasized adaptability, precision, and the psychological factors that influence performance under extreme stress. Her methods challenged conventional wisdom, about equipment requirements while validating approaches that prioritized human development over technological dependence, influencing how departments allocated training resources and evaluated personnel capabilities. Rivera's team members gradually embraced training methodologies that combined their technological advantages with fundamental skills that enhanced their effectiveness regardless of equipment availability, creating a more versatile and capable unit that could address diverse tactical challenges without depending entirely on sophisticated systems that might fail or prove inadequate under specific operational conditions. Their improved performance in subsequent operations validated Elena's assertion that human capabilities and technological resources worked best when integrated rather than viewed as competing approaches to tactical excellence. Elena's consulting practice expanded to include federal agencies and military training facilities that recognized the value of her unique perspective on developing precision shooting capabilities through proven methodologies that emphasized mental toughness, technical proficiency, and equipment reliability. Her work with special operations training programs contributed to curriculum development that prepared personnel for missions where technological advantages might not be available while maintaining focus on achieving tactical objectives through superior human performance. The broader impact of Elena's success extended beyond law enforcement to influence discussions about veteran employment, skills translation, and the ways that military expertise could contribute to civilian public safety, without militarizing police operations or compromising the community-oriented approaches that effective law enforcement required. Her example demonstrated that veteran capabilities could enhance rather than replace traditional policing methods while providing career opportunities that honored military service through continued dedication to protecting innocent lives. Elena's father's rifle, which had been the object of so much initial mockery, was eventually displayed in Phoenix PD's training facility as a symbol of the enduring value of proven equipment and fundamental skills that transcended technological trends and equipment cycles. The display included information about Thomas Chun's military service and Elena's achievements, creating an educational opportunity that honored both their contributions while reinforcing lessons about precision, dedication, and the importance of respecting expertise regardless of its apparent simplicity or age. The annual ceremony commemorating the Sunset Towers rescue became an opportunity for the department to recognize not only Elena's extraordinary performance, but also the broader lessons about professional humility, adaptive thinking, and the dangerous assumptions that could compromise operational effectiveness when appearances were valued over proven capabilities. The event attracted participants from agencies throughout the region who came to honor Elena's achievement while committing to training approaches that emphasized human development alongside technological resources. Elena's quiet satisfaction with these developments reflected her belief that the most important outcome wasn't personal recognition, but the institutional changes that would improve law enforcement capabilities and save innocent lives in future situations where conventional approaches proved inadequate. Her focus remained on developing others rather than celebrating her own achievements, consistent with the service-oriented values that had shaped her military career and continued to guide her civilian contributions to public safety. The legacy of that afternoon in Phoenix extended far beyond a single tactical operation to influence how law enforcement professionals thought about training, equipment, and the human factors that ultimately determine success or failure in life or death situations. Elena's demonstration that experience, precision, and proven equipment could achieve extraordinary results under impossible conditions became a permanent reminder that the most sophisticated technology was only as effective as the human being who employed it, and that true tactical excellence required the kind of fundamental skills that could only be developed through dedicated practice, proven mentorship, and the wisdom that came from understanding that every shot carried the weight of innocent lives. depending on absolute precision. In the end, Elena Vasquez had done more than save 47 people with 4 precisely placed shots. She had reminded an entire profession that quiet competence, proven methods, and respect for fundamental principles remained the foundation of exceptional performance. Regardless of how impressive the available technology might appear to those who had never faced the ultimate test of their capabilities under conditions where failure meant innocent people would die, looking back on that day in Phoenix, I can't help but wonder about the quiet heroes walking among us right now. Maybe it's the unassuming woman ahead of you in the grocery store checkout line, or the soft-spoken man sitting across from you on the subway. Perhaps it's your neighbor who waves politely but never talks much about their past, or the consultant at your office who carries themselves with an understated confidence that suggests depths you've never explored. Elena Vasquez returned to her modest duplex that evening, carefully cleaning and storing her father's rifle with the same reverence she'd shown for 20 years. The media requests kept coming, the job offers multiplied, but she remained focused on what mattered most: training the next generation of protectors and honoring the memory of the man who had taught her that precision and patience were more powerful than any technology money could buy. 6 months later, Rivera's tactical unit had integrated Elena's fundamental training methods with their modern equipment, creating a hybrid approach that emphasized human capability alongside technological resources. The department's success rate improved dramatically, but more importantly, officers learned to trust their skills rather than depending entirely on their gear. Elena still lives quietly in Phoenix, still drives her 15-year-old Toyota, still prefers simple jeans and button-down shirts. But now, when she walks into any law enforcement facility in the Southwest, she's greeted with the respect that comes from proven performance under impossible pressure. Sometimes the most powerful stories are carried by the quietest people. Question is, would you recognize them if you met them? If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join our community where we celebrate the hidden strength in ordinary people. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from across America who understand that real heroes don't always wear capes, and the most impressive capabilities often come in the most unassuming packages. What quiet hero might be hiding in your own life?